Okay, so today we're going to look at how to add two numbers using the part-part-whole mat and the part-part-whole method. So if you take a look, here is our part-part-whole mat. So you can see at the top there's two smaller rectangles, and at the bottom there's one bigger rectangle. So the two smaller rectangles are our two parts. So as we know, when you add something together, you add two smaller numbers or two parts to get one bigger whole. So that's why these two boxes are smaller, because these are our two parts that we're going to add together to get one bigger whole. So let's take a look at a word problem. So here's our first problem. It says Sarah has 5 green Skittles and 7 red Skittles. How many Skittles does Sarah have? So in order to find out how many Skittles she has, we have to take her 5 green Skittles and her 7 red Skittles and put those all together. So what we're going to do is take our first part. So like we said, a part is a smaller number that we're going to put together to get a bigger number. So our first part is going to be 5 for her 5 green Skittles. So we'll go to the first part box. So we're going to put our first part, and we're going to do 5 green Skittles. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So those are her 5 green Skittles. So now, that's our first part, and now we're going to take our second part, which is her 7 red Skittles, because that's the other part, or the other smaller number, that we're going to be adding to get a bigger whole. So let's take our 7 red Skittles and put them in our second part box. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So now that we have our 5 green Skittles in our first part box and our 7 red Skittles in our second part box, we have to put them all together to make our whole. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring down our first part and our second part into the whole box. So all of them are down in the whole box. So let's start with our first part, which is 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to take our second part and bring that down as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So now that we have all of them down here in this whole box, we're going to count them up and see how many we have in total. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we just counted 12 Skittles in our whole box. So that means that when we put together 5 green Skittles and 7 red Skittles, that gave us 12 in total. So let's write out an equation. And we know that an equation is like a sentence, but with numbers. So let's take a look. We said our first part was 5 for 5 red Skittles. So 5. And then we're adding, so we're going to use a plus sign. And then we said our second part was our 7 red Skittles. And then in an equation, when we are about to write the answer, we have to write equals. And then we saw down here that our answer was 12. So first part was 5, second part was 7, so 5 plus 7, and then our whole was 12, so 5 plus 7 equals 12. So Sarah had 12 Skittles. Now let's take a look at another problem, and then using your part whole mat and your counters at home, you're going to follow along with the problem and we're going to do it together. So here again we see our part whole mat with 2 smaller part boxes and 1 larger whole box. We have our new question, which says Robert has 9 red roses and 8 white roses. How many roses does Robert have? So again, we're going to take our first part, which is 9, because we're adding 9 and 8 to figure out how many he has. So we're going to take 9, and in our first part box, we'll put 9 roses. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if you haven't done so already, I also want you to put 9 counters in your first part box. So then our second part is 8, because Robert also has 8 white roses. So again, in our second box, and you should follow along, we're going to put 8 white roses. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So just like we did in the last problem, we're going to move all of our counters down to the whole box. So on the screen I don't have real counters, so I'm just going to draw more down here in my whole box, but you with your counters can just slide them on down into your whole box. So I'm going to start with our first part box, which had 9. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it doesn't matter if you're drawing these, how big they are or the shape, as long as there is the right amount. And then we're going to move on to our second part box, and we're going to move those down. So they were 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now we're going to count these all up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So when we moved all of our parts down to our whole box, we got 17. So that means Robert had 17 roses. So again, we're going to write an equation. So we're going to take our first part, which was 9, our plus sign because we are adding, and we know that's the sign that we use to add, and then our second part, which was 8, equals our answer, which was 17. So now that we've seen 2 problems, let's just review the steps of using the part whole mat. So step 1, just like we did in our problems, you want to identify your 2 parts. So like we said, your 2 parts are the 2 numbers that you're putting together to make one bigger number or a whole. So again, your 2 parts are the numbers that you're adding together. So step 2 is you want to put the correct amount of counters in each part box. So just like we did if we were adding 9 roses as our first part, we put 9 counters in our first part box, and then if our second part is 8 roses, we put 8 counters in our second part box. So step 3 was to slide your counters down to make them one whole in your whole box. So slide them on down into that whole box to make it one big number. So when all those counters are in the whole box, we want to count them up. Step number 4 is to count them up and find your answer. And then finally, step 5 is to write your equation. So take your two parts, add them together, which equals your whole. So now that we have taken a look at 2 of these problems and how to solve them, as well as the steps to go through when solving an addition problem using your part-whole mat, I want you to take a look at the problems that are in the Prezi, and on a sheet of paper, using your part-whole mat, I want you to solve them and bring them into class tomorrow.